Bryce?
And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean, not telling him that he was fleeing. He fled from all of his possessions, crossing the Euphrates, and headed from the hill country of Gilgal. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his relatives with him, pursuing Jacob for 7 days, and overtook him in the hill country of Gilgal. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night. Watch yourself, God warned him. Don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. When Laban overtook Jacob, Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban and his relatives also pitched their tent in the hill country of Gilgal. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me and taken my daughters away like prisoners of war. Why did you, sir? Why did you secretly flee from me, deceive me, and not tell me? I would have sent you away with joy and singing, with tambourines and lyres. But you didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters. You have acted foolishly. I could do you great harm. But last night, the God of your father said to me, watch yourself. Don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long for your father's family. But why have you stolen my goods?" Jacob answered, "I was afraid, for I thought that you had taken your daughters from me by force. If you find your gods with anyone here, he will not live. Before our relatives, point out anything that is yours and take it." Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the idols. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, Leah's tent, and the tents of the two concubines. But he found nothing. When he left Leah's tent, he went into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken some of Laban's household idols, putting them in the saddlebag of the camel, and sat on them. Laban searched the whole tent, but he found nothing. She said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I am having my period." So Laban searched, but could not find the household idols. Then Jacob became incensed and brought charges against Laban. "What is my crime?" he said to Laban. "What is my sin? That you have persuaded me. You have stretched out all my possessions, and have you found anything of yours? Put it here before my relatives and yours. Let them let them decide between the two of us." That's it.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I have
Are you
been with
finished?
you
All
for,
right, good.
Yeah, I'm
I
finished.
have, okay. I've been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in daytime and the cold at night. The sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this. It was like this for 20 years I was in your household. I worked for 14 years for two of your daughters and 6 years for your flocks. And you charged my wages, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would have surely sent me away empty handed. God has seen my hardship and toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Laban said to Jacob, the women are my daughters, and the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine and about the children they are born? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So he took stones and piled them up in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Uh,
Ahadutha.
what?
That's all right.
Okay. And Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." That is why it is called Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, "May the Lord keep watch between you and me, and when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughter, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me." Laban also said to Jacob, "Here's this heap, here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us." So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Um, what you see happening here in chapter 31, or the beginning of it, you see another situation where the patriarchs, and when I say the patriarchs, I mean Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. The patriarchs, what they have accumulated, their possessions that they have accumulated, or the blessings that God had given them, have generated great envy by others. You'll remember in Genesis chapter 21, when there was the treaty at Beersheba between Abraham and King Abimelech, when Abimelech's servants had seized one of Abraham's wells because they felt that he was becoming too wealthy and that God was blessing Abraham. And so they took one of Abraham's wells to slow that process down in terms of his wealth. And so you saw jealousy and envy taking place there. And then you see further in chapter 26, Isaac also had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. And there you have that envy going on also for Isaac. And so now we see Jacob, his father-in-law and his brothers-in-law. They are all envious of the wealth that he too is accumulating, and it appears as if everything our father owned, he has gained all this wealth from what belonged to their father. You hear his brothers-in-law claiming, and so they too become envious of what God had blessed Jacob with as well. And what it also shows, what it also tells us, is that um, uh, um, in the early stages of the last chapter and so forth, you found that Laban was being blessed by God, or Laban was being blessed through God's blessing of Jacob. And so he was becoming, Laban became wealthy as a result of the way in which God had blessed Jacob in his work for Laban. However, when Jacob wanted to leave, um, and return home, Laban did not like the idea and wanted him to say how much he wants to be paid to remain. He wanted him to stay because obviously he had had this divination experience in which it was told that the reason why you're getting so rich is because of Jacob and Jacob's God blessing you. And so after Jacob realized that he was not going to get away so easily, he decided then with the animals that he would take the speckled and the striped and those kinds of animals. And Laban said, yes, that's a deal. And then the same very day, he made sure that those animals went toward his sons, and Jacob was left out in the lurch. But as we read in chapter 30, Jacob found a way in which the deception in these guys are so great. They're all good deceivers of each other. And so Jacob was able to find a way to deceive Laban so that he can have animals, his own livestock. So what you see beginning today is Jacob being able to do that and to do it successfully. And as you read in this chapter, he speaks about the times, and he claimed, he used the number 10 times that during this process you have changed my wages. So you know that there was the more that Laban thought that Jacob was not getting rich, and he realized he was, and tried to do something to prevent that from happening. However, always unsuccessfully. So here we see now that that God now will be blessing Jacob's efforts, and that Laban was no longer being blessed by his association with Jacob, that God had reversed and turned things around, where it comes now to a situation that Laban was actually being, for lack of a better word, cursed for his treatment of Jacob. And that's where we pick it up today. So you see you start off in verse 31, in chapter 31, that Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying that he had taken everything of their fathers, what their father owned, and had gained all this wealth from what had belonged to their father. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been, obviously because he wasn't continuing the wealth that he had previously. And so then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. And so you see here that it was always the intention for Jacob to return to his home. That was always the intention. His mother looked forward to that day. She did not know when it will be, but she looked forward for that day to come. And so now Jacob wanted to do that 6 years previously after he had gotten Rachel had had a child, and he wanted to do that 6 years previously, but then decided, well, obviously that wasn't a good time. Laban wasn't going to let him go, and so he decided that he will work for flocks for the next 6 years. But now God had told him it is time to go return home. So whereas it wasn't good time then, it is obviously apparently a good time now since God told him to go. So in verse 4, so Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah. Note, Rachel is the second wife, but her name is mentioned first. And you will see that repeated again, which is symbolic of the fact that she becomes the more important wife. She becomes, or in technical terms, the more senior wife. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have worked for your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. So you see Jacob here is mentioning the changing of his wages on a number of occasions. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said the streak ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streak young. Then all the flocks bore streak young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. So even then, you see that every time that Laban changes the goalposts, it still defeats him because you're running up against the God Almighty. You can't win, buddy. You cannot win. You could just give it up. So you see that is happening where the more Laban tried to make change the course of action, God um, puts a spoke in the wheel, and Jacob continues to be blessed, and Laban is not. So there you see that is happening. Um, and then and you see he calls his wives together, the two wives, to tell them what is going on, what is happening, and to set the record straight. Now you see now when you get to verse 10, we read in breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in a dream, Jacob. I answered, Here I am. And he said, Look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. So now Jacob tells his wives the vision, the dream that he relays this to his wives, and he lets them know that it's a vision that he had received from God when he first when God first spoke to him, when he was at Bethel, where he made a pillar and where he asked God to protect him. And now this whole thing is coming full circle. And he had told them that God had assured him that he had seen his unfair treatment at the hands of Laban, that God had compassion on his suffering by providing him with the flock he deserves. And so now you see that this whole notion of returning home is mentioned again. In verse 14, then Rachel and Leah replied, Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Padan-aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. And when Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away, so he fled with all he had, and crossing the river, he headed for the hill country of Gilead. So when we look at this, you can see there is this whole notion of kind of like the word stealing. Yes, sorry, Ted.
No, steal. Steal his gods. Is this like idols, or what do you think it means? Is
Correct.
it? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Is
Yes.
that like they set up a prayer area and they have their idols? Yeah.
it could be, or it could have been a situation where these idols could have been used for like protecting their homes and their property and that kind of thing. They would not have been big statues. They would have been little small things. And you can tell that because Rachel sat on them and, later on. But they would have been little statue, almost like we would call them probably like ornaments, in which they would have worshipped these kinds of gods. You have to remember that Laban is in a part of the country that is run by the Hittites, and the Hittites had their own gods. Hence the reason why you saw this strange name that if you realize, Laban called the pillar, the covenant that they made, and the pillar that they made one name, while Jacob called it another name. And the other thing I will say about these gods is that sometimes when there was a bit of confusion in those days, if there was a bit of confusion over, let's say, there was no decision as to who will inherit after Laban, chances are the person who was in possession of those kinds of gods will be the person who will take over. Which I believe is why Rachel went after them, because she is the senior wife. So now she becomes like the senior daughter, and from what we could figure it out is that they were older than Laban's sons. Because if you remember last week, I said Rachel was at the well with the sheep and she was a shepherd. And in those days, for a woman to be a shepherd, it meant that there were either no males to do that work, or no male servants, or no male sons old enough or alive to do that work. So obviously it appears that the two girls would have been the two older of the children at the time when Jacob first turned up. And I mean, the sons could have been born, but they would have been younger than the girls. And so and they were important in those days, which is why we believe that Rachel took them, because as we will say, if push came to shove, she would be the one who would take over, or would be seen as taking over, since she had the gods in her possession. Yes.
Okay, thanks. That was good. Yeah.
No, you're welcome, Ted. You're most welcome. So you see here this whole notion of the stealing of the gods. You hear that mentioned there. You heard the whole notion of where am I looking? I'm looking here. You saw. You saw the way how Laban was trying to steal from Jacob, in terms of changing the goalposts all the time. Each time something happens, and you also there's this whole underlying feeling as if Jacob would have stolen, and you would see this whole stealing from the father, and you will see this even come up later on as well, in verses 30 and following, about this whole notion of this feeling of stealing going on at this time among the family. And there was another thing I wanted to. What I wanted to mention is, so what we see happening here is that when Jacob called his wives, he gives them reasons, 3 reasons why. He wanted to leave, but then and those 3 reasons was that his father's attitude had changed, their father's attitude had changed toward him, that the father had continually cheated him, and that his God had commanded him that it's time to return home. Now you will see here, Rachel and Leah they want to know now where they stand as far as their father's estate is concerned, because it appears that they were treated like servants and not like daughters. And you will see that they too, does he not regard us as foreigners? So they already know that he is not regarding them in the way that they should be. And testimony to this came when in verse 15, they said, not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. And if you remember, and this is in those days, as I said, mentioned, like a dowry, they would have had. If Jacob had gone there and had money and flocks and a flock and all of that with him, he would have given Laban a dowry for the wives, or to have these wives. And the custom would have been is for Laban, he would have gotten some of it, but he would have saved some of it for the children, for his children, and for their children, so that when they leave, he would have given that portion back to them. Since Jacob did not have that, he came with nothing, then the fact that he worked, obviously, Laban is too trickster a guy to pay him what he's worth. So the money that he would have been keeping, that he should have paid the guy and didn't pay Jacob, he should have been given that money back to his daughters, for them and for their children. So that is why you see the children saying, not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. And then in verse 16, surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. So here is it that Rachel and Leah, they have said to him, we are behind you. We support you. We will follow you. And the reasons that they do this is because they're unlikely to inherit anything from the father. He treated them like outsiders. That's what they're saying. He treated them like foreigners and not like daughters, and he had cheated them out of what was rightfully theirs. And therefore, and that too, probably, you could almost tell when it gets to, when you hear about Rachel taking the household gods, it's like, yeah, you like these things, I can take them from you. And you can almost see that she's like doing this little vindictive little thing there to get at him, to nudge him. I see Susan and then Linda. Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, well, I thought women were not getting anything. I thought the men got all the inheritance. So it kind of surprised me that Leah and Rachel thought they were going to get.
But the thing is, no. But when if a husband, a man came and was their husband and was paid, gave money or give wealth to the father of the daughters to have the bride, the expectation was that and in a case like this where he was staying for so long, the expectation was that they would get something in return from the father to help them and their children. Correct.
Okay. But
Yes.
they got nothing. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Linda, you had a question?
Yeah, when you said that they took their gods, their idols, was that, when did it become a one God society? When was that?
No, it was not a one God society. It was not a one. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, you have to remember that Laban wasn't worshiping the living God like Jacob was. Laban was worshiping the Hittite gods. That was the area where he
So they
was
had
in.
multiple gods, the
Oh
Hittites?
yes, oh yes,
Oh,
oh yes.
okay.
Only the Hebrew people had one God. Only the Hebrew people
Oh,
had
okay.
God.
Okay.
Some of these places had a God for rain, a God for sunshine, and a God for food, and a God for this. They had
Okay.
multiple
Oh,
gods. Yes,
I
yes.
know the Romans and the Greeks did. I wasn't sure
Oh
about any
yes,
other.
oh yes, oh
Mhm.
yes, oh
Okay.
yes, oh yeah. they came to the. It wasn't like our God that He's the God of everything. They had to have these other gods, all these gods, because multiple gods, because they all had various purposes.
And this is Laban. And so did Rachel and Leah also believe in multiple gods?
They would have at the time, yes,
Yes.
But Jacob didn't.
and
Jacob did not.
they would have later changed to reflect who Jacob was.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Actually,
They
I
would have
just
later.
looked up. I just looked up AI. The Hittites, who famously worshipped 1,000 gods,
Oh yes,
incorporating deities from their own Indo-European heritage.
yes,
The indigenous Hittian people and neighboring Hurrian and Mesopotamian cultures. Their highly syncretic Parthenon was primarily led by a supreme storm god and his royal consort, governing the world, deeply tied to nature and agriculture. Yeah. Very
yes,
interesting.
yes.
Yeah.
They had multiple gods, and thank you for that, Ted. That is wonderful. They had multiple gods, and so you will find that that would have been whom Rachel and Leah and Laban and that whole area would have been worshiping those gods. Yes. Yes. Remember at this time, the people who are worshiping this one God now in this part of Genesis will be the people like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and their families. Those will be the ones that will be worshiping the God that we worship. Okay, so then we get and before I say that, so obviously you see the girls are angry. You can tell from what they're saying that they're angry with their father. They think he's greedy. They feel that he's kept everything for himself, and the part of the price that was for the bride that each daughter was supposed to receive, as I said, as a dowry, he did not give them. And especially to this poor guy had to work 14 years, and yet they ended up with nothing. It was quite obvious that they sided with their husband, and understandably so. And we learn about the departure, how Jacob planned the departure. He kept the plans a secret. He waited until Laban and his sons were out busy in the fields shearing the sheep. And then he fled with his daughters and children and household and servants and everyone, and animals he left during that time. And I mentioned already about the household gods that Rachel took, unbeknown to her husband, that could have almost cost her her life. So, but as I said to the group this morning, I said, "You all women more smarter than men. You all women smarter than men. So you all know what to do." All right, let's move on. Verse 22. Any questions before I move on? Any questions? Because we're now going to change the tune now from Jacob fleeing from Laban, and now Laban is pursuing him. So that's where we're going to be picking up now. So verse 22. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled, taken his relatives with him. He pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." And one of the things that you see, and you'll hear this whole what's the word I want? This whole theme of stealing again going on here. But I want you to realize again, as I always keep telling you, don't look at numbers and think they're exactly what they are, because it is no way that if Laban left he found out 3 days after Jacob had fled. So my whole feeling is he probably left virtually the same time, but at least the next day. And it's only 7 days. He pursued him for 7 days. So, but it is no way that Jacob could have traveled from Haran to Gilead in 10 days. It is really, it isn't possible. It was probably like 350 to 400 miles away. If you see the map from where Jacob left Haran down to Gilead. I mean, he was just across the border from Canaan. He was almost home actually by the time Laban caught up with him, and it is no way that he could have traveled with wives and children and all this. I mean, and all this, these animals in 10 days. Even Laban would have had to be going really fast to get to where Jacob was. So just see these numbers, as I always say, 3 and 7 and all this sort of as symbolic numbers, that they're considered perfect numbers or numbers of completion in the Bible, and they normally symbolize God's time, that God was in the midst of what was going on, and not necessarily that it was actually 7 days or 3 days. So you see here that Laban is now pursuing Jacob, but he gets a dream from God, and God said to him, "Don't do anything stupid with Jacob, because you will pay, buddy. You will pay." And I mean, I will tell you honestly, I mean, based on what it says here, not necessarily is exact, but that God would have, he said not to say anything good or bad to him. I mean, I would have turned around and gone back home, because what can you say? God tell you, don't say anything good, don't say anything bad. So you could as well go back home. I mean, in my opinion, I would have gone back home and forget about it. But
Tony, that's another issue. You say God said to him, don't say anything good or bad. But who did Laban worship when he sees God talking to him? Which God is that?
Well, the thing is about it is, and that is a good question, Ted. But the thing is about it is, the belief is that the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob was such a powerful God that he was able to recognize it wasn't one of his. This was a whole completely different God.
Okay, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly. Although it's not our God, it was powerful enough that it became one of his gods as well, or he recognized it as his God as well.
Yes. And which God has the ability to do for people like him to recognize. I mean, you will see it happen in the New Testament. You will see it happen in the New Testament, where people who were seen as pagans, as Gentiles, that they will come, that did not have the upbringing, like how, I mean, take a man like Cornelius, for example, who was Roman and who would not have known much about this Hebrew God, and others in the New Testament. Their eyes came they became aware of this. Mind you as well, remember, I think it was in the last chapter, Laban had also done one of these, what he called a divination, where the person, whoever he went to, whether it was one of the pagan priests or whoever, had already told him, your success and your wealth is coming from the God that is blessing Jacob. That was already, let me see if we find where that is. Hold on again.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, that I think we read in chapter 30.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was it chapter 30? Anybody who can find it before me, go right ahead. Um,
That's major, isn't it, really? Yeah.
it is major. It is
Yeah.
major.
Yeah.
That is why he did not want Jacob to leave, because he had realized that his wealth was coming from God's blessing of Jacob. And
Right,
that's why
right.
he wanted to keep him there all the time. So this is not the first time that Laban has a yes, George, you found it?
It's verse 27 of chapter 30.
Of chapter 30, right. Verse 27.
Yeah, let's
Yes.
read that quickly.
But
Yeah.
Laban said to him, you got it?
30,
But chapter 30, verse 27.
27. I'm getting there. 27. But
But
Laban said to him, I have found the favor in your eyes. Please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord, and this is capital Lord, has blessed me because of you. He added, name your wages and I will pay them. Wow.
you see,
Yeah.
so he knew that he knew that God was blessing him because of him, and that it was his God that was doing it. And that's why he wanted to keep him. So this is not the first time that, you got to remember, God can do whatever God can do. That's why I always say to people, let God be God. Don't step in the way. Let God be God. And so you see this happening, and he has had his experiences with Jacob's God. It is interesting that he does not. It doesn't tell you that he converted to this God, but the fact remains is he is aware that there is a God that is much higher and superior. So you have that there, yes. But good point. So then you see Jacob had pitched verse 25, Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead, where when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. And then we're going to have this dialogue. Then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Like if you really cared. But let's continue. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of tambourines and harps? And as I said to the others this morning, yeah, right. and you didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house, but why did you steal my gods? Now, and here you see him, he says it here, but last night the God of your father said to me, he doesn't say my God, the God of your father said to me. Be careful what you say to Jacob. So here, what you're going to see is that when Laban confronts Jacob, you get this impression as if, oh, he's going to have a big going away party for them, and you know that ain't happening. That Laban would never even be thinking that if he didn't see them. And what he's doing is that he is expressing his hurt feelings, insincerely, of course, because and he couldn't resist suggesting that taking his daughters was an act of war, and included the threat that he had the power to harm them if he wanted. And the thing is about it is, it tells you that if God did not tell him what not to do, that was his intention, that his intention was to harm Jacob. And the thing is about it is, he could have killed him. Or instead of now him being like a servant, he would have really become a slave, which would have been even lower than he was to Laban at the time. And so he had to change his whatever ideas that he had to change them because God had spoken to him about this. One of the things I wanted to mention, let me see where I'm at. Hold on one second. One of the things I want to mention is that also in those days, if you were dealing with people who were slaves or who were servants, that when you escape, when you escape, you were seen, it was seen or it was considered, and whatever you took, it was considered as a theft. So, in other words, Jacob could have been seen as stealing the property, and you will later hear Laban talking about the children are mine and the property and everything is mine. You will hear Laban saying that later on, and so and the daughters are his and all of this, and so you will find that when someone who was a servant or a slave had escaped and gone and stolen what we perceive as still stealing the property, that the offense was punishable by death. It was punishable by death. That is why I'm saying it is quite possible that he could have killed Jacob because it was punishable by death. So really and truly, if God did not intervene, telling him not to do anything bad to Jacob, it could have gone a whole lot worse. But as you know, God had already promised Jacob, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to take care of you. So he had not to worry. And you will find that Jacob, it's an interesting thing. The way how Jacob left Canaan and went to Haran is not the same Jacob that is returning. He's a completely different person because while he was going, when he went, he was going as a guy who, he heard his father praying and having such awe and reverence of God and all this sort of stuff. But Jacob didn't buy into it, which is a lot, which happens with us now today, where parents will worship God, but there's some children, their children don't. And you see that happening today. And therefore, this will be a good passage for such children to read, to see how you change from worshiping, from not having a relationship with God to having one. And the way how Jacob did was when he got to Bethel and he had that experience with God. And he even said to God, after even God said, I'm with you, he even said to God, well, God, if you are with me, I will do my part of give my part of the relationship. And from then on, you see that he slowly draws closer to God, but it really shows when he's on his return back. On his return from Haran. And one of the things that you also have to realize here as well is that what you see Laban is also saying to Jacob is he's accusing him of, it's almost like stealing his heart. The way how you left, you stole my heart. You deceived me, you kidnapped my daughters, you steal my household gods, and all these things are important. But he doesn't tell you, but you steal my animals too. You would have thought, after all of what he was doing by getting wealthy with the animals, with the various sheep and all this, you would have thought that would have been the number one thing he complained about. He never complains about that in this regard. He just mentions about not letting him kiss his grandchildren and his daughters, and about carrying them off as prisoners of war. And then he talks about stealing my gods. Those become the important things for him, at least at this point in time. And then in verse 31, Jacob answered Laban, I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, and if so, take it. Now, Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. And so, having made such a pronouncement, which I think is a little, I mean, even a kid could have probably stolen the gods too. And so to say that, get, take the life of whoever stole your gods, I thought that was a little bit too, was that? I thought that was a little bit too far-fetched, but I mean, I think he felt that nobody would have stolen anything. He was so convinced that no one would have stolen anything, not knowing that Rachel, the beloved, was the one who did. Um, uh, let's see. So stealing the gods meant that they would have been put to death. In verse 33, so Laban went to Jacob's tent. Note he goes to Jacob first because it is quite likely that he felt that Jacob would have been the one who stole. And then he realized that he isn't. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maidservants, but he found nothing. And after he came out of Leah's tent, he went into Rachel's tent. So he goes. So the thing is, Laban still goes. He goes with the head of the household first, which is Jacob, and then he goes to the first daughter, which is Leah, and then to her servants, her maids, and then he goes into the younger daughter, which is Rachel. And we see in verse 34, now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. And Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. And then Rachel said to her father, don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I am having my period. So he searched, but could not find the household gods. So even Rachel get it in on the deception act as well. I mean, she got her father, she got her husband, she in good company, I guess. But she too is deceives her father in terms of that. As one person asked, or a couple of persons asked this morning, I wonder if she was really telling the truth. We feel that she probably wasn't.
I have a question.
Yes, Susan.
Well, the household gods, are they blessed? I mean, can't they get are they little statues or?
Yeah, they're like little figurines, little statues. Yeah, that's what they are.
Or you couldn't get others? Are they blessed or something? I mean, why was it?
Well, you see,
Susan, if you go to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, they have these little statues that they're worshipped. So that's what I came to mind when Father Tony said that. They're actually, if you go to any museums, you'll see some of these statues, and actually the Romans used to carry them with them and pray to them their gods when they were on campaigns.
So that's why it was so
like
personal. Okay.
Yeah, they were personal to them. It was personal to them.
Yeah. It's like their wealth, actually. It's very important to them.
Yeah. You were going to say something, Pam?
I was going to ask a question. How long is the journey that they're on?
How long in terms of miles?
No, in terms of time, because Rachel dies on the journey and she has a child. So I don't think she's having her period. I think she's already pregnant.
That's what I'm saying. She's probably telling a lie. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
unless you're telling me that it was a year-long journey, which it could have been. That's why I asked how long it was.
You see, no one knows how long a journey would have taken.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, you're talking about a journey of 400 miles approximately, and you're going through hill country.
Right.
And hills and terrain that is not that is not conducive for children and animals and getting them all to be going along this. And remember, there's sheep there, and you know how sheep are and all of that. So I don't even know if anybody knows exactly how long that journey was, but I would say it would have been quite some time. I mean, you may look it up on Google and see, but
Yeah, it says, I did look it up while you were talking. It
Mhm.
says the 500-mile journey from Beersheba to Haran. That's the other way, but
Yeah,
would
yeah,
take
yeah.
3 to 4 weeks on foot or 20 days on animals. So
Mm.
she was very pregnant.
Yes, yes. And the thing also is, and even, I mean, they even call it, well, they took it to Beersheba. I am thinking about it to about around Shechem because that's where they stopped first before they ultimately got back. Well, you were talking about from Beersheba to Haran, but,
Yeah, and it's
but
the other way, but it
yeah,
doesn't matter. It
it
says
doesn't matter.
caravans with livestock and family members typically cover between 10 to 25 miles a day.
Miles a day. Yes, I would think. Yes.
So
So, so
if you go on the low end because there were little children, that's 40 days. Oh,
yes.
big surprise there.
Yeah, 40 days. That's another biblical God number. Yes. So it could have probably taken that. I mean, obviously, it would not have taken a year. I mean, well, you got to say another thing. You say one thing, you say it next. When the Israelites left Egypt, it should not have taken them as long as it took them to get
40
to Canaan
years.
either. It took them 40 years.
That was a God thing.
I used to think to myself, we're probably going around the circle, man, because it should not. I mean, if you see where Egypt is located and where Israel is located, it looks even closer than Haran
Right,
down to there. Should never have taken them 40 years. So
right.
you could never tell. You can never tell. But thank you for that, both Ted and Pam. Um, Let's see here. Where are we now? We are at verse 36. Good. We're at verse 36. Now you're going to see here now. Um, Laban had his time of chewing up Jacob. Now Jacob is going to explode. And from verse 36, you can tell that he is angry, that he is like lost his temper, and that he is taking Laban to task. So let's read what he says here to Laban. So verse 36, Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. What is my crime? He asked Laban. What sin have I committed that you hunted me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Excuse me. Put it here in front of your relatives and mine and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you and now we hear you and hear him now talk about the frustration of 20 years of working for Laban. He says, I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring your animals torn by wild beasts. I did not bring your animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime, in the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your two daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. And you can tell the frustration, the anger, and he relays in summary all that he went through during those 20 years. Working for his uncle slash father-in-law, and so it gives you a picture now as to the servitude that Jacob gave, and it was all to the credit of God that he survived and therefore also found prosperity in the end. And he recognizes that if not for God, that he probably would have worked all those 20 years and still ended up with nothing, based on the kind of person that Laban was. One of the things I want to mention to you is when he talks about in verse 30, where is it? Verse 39, he says, I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded, is that reading correctly? Is that what your all verse say in verse 39? Let me see something here. Yes, okay.
I
Yeah.
did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. Yeah, that's what it says.
And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. Okay, right. This was my situation. And I share that because in those days, I think the last time you heard me talk about there was a code call called the Call of Hammurabi. And even when it got later down to the Sinai covenant in Exodus, a shepherd, when you was a shepherd, you was not liable for animals that were attacked or killed or mauled by a predator. You did not bear that cost. You only bore the cost if a sheep was lost or stolen. You bore that cost. And here you see Jacob is saying, I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. So if any were killed, he bore the loss himself. And then the thing is, and then furthermore, then he says, and you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. You see that Jacob had to bear the loss of those that were stolen and those that were killed, when really and truly he should not have been bearing the loss of those who were killed. That was the rule, that was the code of that time. But Laban was so ruthless that he made sure he had to bear the cost in both cases. In fact, not that even that Laban made him do it. He realized that if he didn't bear the cost, especially with the ones that were killed, that he had to bear the cost. So he didn't even worry to present that to Laban because he knew he was going to have to still bear the cost for it. So I just wanted to explain that. Somebody wanted to say something? I heard somebody's voice. Oh. The other thing I want to mention here is in verse 42, you see it talks, and if the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would have surely sent me away empty. And you see this term, the fear of God, the fear of Isaac, which is only mentioned twice in the Bible, and both in this chapter. You see it here in verse 42, and you'll see it and later down in the end, toward the end of the chapter, which was a kind of a unique term, unique title that was used for God. And the whole notion is that the fear of Isaac, it is not that we are accustomed to hearing the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, but the fact that Isaac used the term the fear of Jacob used the term the fear of Isaac. It wasn't that Isaac was fearful of God, but more so that Jacob was describing the awe and the reverence that his father had for God. And so he used it in that term and not in that way, and not that the father was fearful of God. So the fear of Isaac here is that knowing how Isaac was so religious and so in tune and in relationship with his God, that it just means that he was very much in awe and reverence towards him. Verse 43, Laban comes back now, and he says, Laban answers Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. And you see here that that Laban is stamping his authority on these things are mine. And in a sense, he is probably correct based on what the codes were of that time. And if Jacob was seen as a servant or as a slave, then he didn't own anything. And these things would have belonged to Laban. And so when you hear Laban saying this, it also tells you that Laban, if he had his way, he would have sent him away empty-handed. That confirms that he would have done that. So Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So he knows he can't do anything. God already warned him. He can't do anything. So he only can come down to the best next thing and to say, okay, let's make a covenant. Let's make an agreement here. And both sides of the fence, me and my sons and my servants and all of that, and you and your wives and children and whoever else you got with you, they will witness what's going on here. So in verse 35, so Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Shahadutha, and Jacob called it Galeed. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today, that is why it was called Galeed, and it was also called Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness. So between you and me, so it's almost he's taking his two fingers and he's punching them in his eyes and saying, God is watching you, buddy. Don't do anything. And you can also tell that Laban is still wanting to take control of Jacob's life. Even although he's gone, he still wants to make sure that he's not entreating his daughters, that he's not marrying other wives. And then you will see then the other thing that he talks about when we go on to verse 51. He says, Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. So in other words, no, this is the boundary line. We must not cross it. I mean, I don't know why Laban would want to be back down there anyhow. He almost in Jacob's territory. I mean, why would you want to come back that far anyhow? But again, they made a boundary line there.
So, Father, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Gilead, what? Is it Gilead? Is it Gilead?
Gilead and Galeed.
It's Gilead, isn't it?
You mean this? You mean the second one?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether or not it morphed into Gilead.
It might be because, and it is quite possible. I can't remember if it is or not, to be honest with you. But you will find that in some places the names are switched. It is also called Mizpah. If you remember, that name is also used as well. Mizpah is also used.
Right.
It could be. Does anyone have any notes to state? That is verse 47 and 48. I don't have
My
any.
note,
Go ahead, George.
my notes say Mitzpah is a town in Gilead.
Correct. Yeah. It is a town in but you see here that they also call that place Mizpah as well. You see that in verse 49. That is also called Mizpah, and it's because may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. That is what it means. And you see, and the definition that you're quoting, George, could be when I say a modern day definition, that because of that could be the reason why the place is called Mizpah as well, if you get what I'm saying. That could also be a reason for it. Yes, Susan.
Well, how could a heap be a witness? What does that mean?
Say that again.
How could a heap be a witness? Isn't that just a pile of dirt?
What are you talking about?
It's at 48. This heap is a witness.
It is a witness between you and me. But you look, it says, this heap is a witness between you and me today.
Yeah.
Well, what is a heap?
It's
Oh,
evidence.
today,
Evidence.
but-
Evidence.
What does the heap? What does that heap symbolize?
It symbolizes that they will be at peace, that they will not, you see it mentions later on that they're not supposed to cross that part.
Right.
They will stay on their opposite sides. But really and truly, it's really a peace treaty. That's what it is that they're doing. It's a peace
pile
treaty.
of rocks, right? It's just a pile of
It
rocks.
is a pile of rocks, but I mean, but you'll be surprised that you could find some of those pile of rocks, and they're more difficult to move them than if you had put cement to them. I mean, because the way how they would have been placed there, they were really stacked in tightly when they would have built. So it wasn't something. What I'm trying to say is, it would not have been something that they would have built that would have soon collapsed and you have no remnant of it. That's not how they would build those in those days.
Okay, like a monument or something.
Correct.
Okay.
And you see, and you realize, if you realize, even in the New Testament, you remember Peter wanted to make 3 booths when they went up on the Mount of Transfiguration, one for Jesus, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah, to remember that occasion. Now that didn't happen, but it is a similar kind of idea.
Okay, like the stone tablet. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And it would have been and you know how they do that? It was similar to how you heard when Abraham went out to make a sacrifice of Isaac, and he put him on top of these pile of rocks as well to sacrifice him. It would have been that kind of thing as well. And obviously you would not have put Isaac on top of something that can just come tumbling down as soon as you put him on top of it.
Well, it sounded like these pile of rocks became towns. I mean, they
Became
called
what?
these pile of rocks did not become a town, right? Or a territory?
No, it would no. There's not that the pile of rocks became a tongue. It would be that because of what the pile of rocks were named, could be that's where the tongue derived its name.
Says that is why it was called Gilead. The pile of rocks was called Gilead.
It was
No. You got to remember. I know there are rocks that was put there, but just think about you have put a monument. Think of a monument today that you have that was built and cemented and painted and all that kind of stuff. This would have been something similar, but instead of thinking of the monument as a national monument, this is a monument toward God.
Okay, I backed up. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
and well, also Galid is a combination of Gal, which means heap of stones, and
Stones,
Ed, which
yes.
means witness or
Correct.
testimony. So it
Correct.
literally means a heap of stone bearing witness to
Yes.
the covenant.
Yes,
Okay.
and thank you for that, Pam. And the other part of it is that you will find is that it was a witness, as you see in verse 48. Laban is saying it is a witness between him and Jacob today, because they're witnessing it, they're present. But then you will see him come further down, and he will say in verse 50, if you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any of my wives, take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us. Notice that even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. So therefore, even if we are not present, God is still a witness to what is going on now and will always be a witness. And it is interesting how he's calling now Jacob's God to him.
Yeah, it is.
It's very interesting
I was
because
just going to say he
he's
converted. He converted.
yeah, it's almost like he almost converted. He's calling out Jacob's God. Your God is mighty and strong, so he's got to be looking at you. See, so you better not do.
I think he scared him. He scared him. Yeah.
He's scared of it. He's scaring him. Yeah, he's still trying to control his life. He's still trying to control his life.
All right.
Verse 15, and I'm glad Pam pointed that out in that word Galid as well, because you will find that also is a common occurrence in the Bible, that certain places are named according to what is being established, or like how it was. One part means Gal means a pile of stones, and lead means witness, and you could find that names like those were named as a result of the situation at the time in that place, and that is how it got it in some places got their name as well.
I was going to say today we use a handshake kind of as a symbol of that.
Yes.
A treaty. Okay.
Yes. And you also have to sign. You got to sign some documents. That's the important part. You got to sign some documents.
Yeah, we have contracts.
You got contracts. That's what happens today.
Yeah.
Verse 51, Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pile I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. So here, and note, you see that Laban is the one who seems to be calling all the shots. He's the one setting up the covenant between them. You don't hear Jacob saying anything in terms of what he thinks should be the part of the covenant, except the fact that he tells his relatives to come and help build the monument at the beginning. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. And after they had eaten, they spent the night there. Note, it doesn't tell you that Laban made a sacrifice. Jacob did. It does not tell you Laban had made a sacrifice. And it does not seem that Laban was involved, or his family, his side of the family were involved in the sacrifice or in the meal. It just tells you that Jacob offers a sacrifice. He invites his relatives to a meal. And after they had eaten, they spent spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. And as far as I can remember, there's nothing more about Laban after that. so,
Good riddance. Good
Good
riddance.
riddance. Good riddance. So you see here, oh, and one of the things I would say too, that if my mind serves me correctly, and Pam can check to see if I'm correct, I think Mizpah meant watchtower. I think, if my mind serves me correct. I don't remember what it means, all these places. But I think what Mizpah means watchtower. You can check that out and tell me if that's correct. Hence the reason why you hear with Jehovah Witness got the watchtower.
Yes.
It means
Yep.
watchtower?
Yes.
Right.
Watchtower or lookout.
Yes, right. And if you know anything about the Jehovah Witnesses, they usually have two magazines, one called the Watchtower and one called Awake. And so the Watchtower would have come from that thing as well. Any questions?
Nope.
All right.
Well, we had
55.
lots along the way.
Huh?
Lots along the way.
Lots of what?
We had lots of questions along the
Oh
way.
yes, oh yes,
Oh, yeah.
oh yes, yes.
Really?
But and it will get interesting some more in chapter 32, because now Jacob is going to prepare to meet none other than the one and only Esau. You'll be seeing him for the first time since all that went on that made Jacob leave. So that's the next chapter.
Did Rachel ever confess to stealing the gods?
No, I don't think I can't remember. I really can't.
She died in childbirth.
She died. She died. Yes,
She died in childbirth within the next 30 days.
Yes.
Oh.
She does have Benjamin, and she dies.
In 32? Okay. In chapter
Mhm.
32. Okay.
Oh, I don't know
Yes.
which chapter she does that in, but that's what happened.
I don't think that happens then. Let me see. She dies in chapter
Doesn't die in
35.
32. She dies later on.
Yeah, she dies in chapter 35.
It's 35.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, she dies in chapter 35.
Okay.
So you still have a little bit more of her, but the next
Yeah, so
course
when Jacob has to change his name 'cause he's
is Jacob and
God,
Esau.
is what it
Yeah.
Oh,
All
okay.
right, everyone.
So-
It's now 7:34. I know you have to have dinner. It was wonderful, wonderful. Good to see you all. And I will see those who are here on Sunday, and those who are not. Do worship wherever you are. So,
Well, Facebook. No.
you
yeah,
go to
yeah.
Facebook?
I listen to your sermon and then I go to church. So
Oh my God. Okay. Oh yes, I forgot. We are hour in front of you.
Yeah,
You're
Yeah.
behind us.
yeah.
So yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. Yeah, you're hour
I
behind.
go a little late.
So therefore you go to church and see if the priest taught the same thing I say.
No, you always have different takes on it.
You're different,
Oh
yeah.
yes.
I like the different takes on the sermon. Or he takes different parts.
Larry and I go to the 8 o'clock service so we can listen to your sermon at 10 because we're back from church by then.
Okay. Is he doing okay?
Yes, he's
Please
doing
tell him.
fine.
Please
He
tell
says-
him we.
he
Please
said
tell
to
him
say
we send
hi.
our love.
He said the same to you.
Yes.
He sends his
tell him
love
we,
to you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Tell him we
yes,
send our love
he
to
does.
him. Okay.
But he's
All right.
asleep right now.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Thanks.
Have a good night,
I
everyone.
do a lot of
Love
yard
to
work.
everyone.
Okay.
Love
See
to
you
you.
all.
Okay.
Bye.
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 We'll do 32.
Bye.
Bye bye.